Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, our life staff, which consists of all of us, are individuals with disabilities. We're going to be presenting information about how to interact whenever you meet someone with a disability, because there's no need to feel any discomfort or to feel awkward in any way. So to give you a little information about LIFE, LIFE stands for Living Independence for Everyone. We are a nonprofit center for independent living, and we are dedicated to promoting independent living and advancing community change for everyone. And what that means in a nutshell is we are about empowering people of all disabilities with access and inclusion and to achieve the goals that you want to set for yourself, for your life. Services are centered again around the independence of people with all disabilities, and anyone with a significant disability that lives within our 20-county service area who can benefit from our services is eligible. Who are people with disabilities? Well, people with disabilities are all of us. We are your neighbors, your friends, your family members, your co-workers. Over 61 million individuals in the United States has a disability that affects their ability to see, hear, walk, communicate, or think. And that number is, pardon?
I'm sorry, I was answering a question.
Okay, sorry. Okay, and that number is expected to double due to aging baby boomers and due to veterans returning home with injuries. But disability is a natural part of the human experience because life happens to us all, whether we're born with a disability or whether it happens later in life through accident or through aging or just through just the natural course of life. It's the only minority group that anyone can join at any time. So again, people with disabilities it's all of us. And so there's no need to feel awkward.
Okay, I'm going to be playing a video that we're going to share with you. That there's no need to be awkward. It's a great video. Let me know if there's trouble with the sound. And I do have to navigate back and forth in order to play the videos. So there might be a gap. I might have to stop sharing and resharing, which I'm going to do now.
Good morning, Bob.
Morning there, big man. Morning, Alice!
There's no need to be awkward. Poor Bob. Like so many of us, he just doesn't know how to interact with people with disabilities.
It's pretty easy, really. People with disabilities are people first.
We need the same things that every person needs, like respect.
Good morning, everyone.
Attention!
Okay. Maybe we need to be more specific.
The easiest way to show respect is to focus on the person, not the disability. It's okay. You'll get the hang of it.
One easy way to focus on the person is to watch the person signing and not their interpreter.
Or their companion.
It's really cool that you'd like to help, but do us both a favor and please ask me first. What you think might be helping?
I got you.
Wait, ah! Oh no, might actually not.
If you'd like to offer me help, let me hold on to your elbow. Don't take mine.
Hey, would you like to take my arm?
Sure.
Assistive devices help us to live our lives. They're really important and really personal.
Grabbing them only makes it weird for everyone.
What?
Please only touch our devices and service animals if we've given you permission. And don't take it personally if I ask you not to. Remember that my service animal helps me all the time. Neither of us would like it if we were separated.
Remember, we make our own decisions. We sign documents, vote, volunteer, work, and pay taxes.
We get married.
So don't underestimate me just because I have a great smile.
Just because I'm blind.
May I help you?
Does not mean I'm deaf.
Just because I'm deaf doesn't mean I'm blind.
And just because I use a wheelchair doesn't mean that I can't sweep you off your feet.
So take a deep breath, relax. We don't bite.
Unless we're really hungry.
Hello there, ladies. How are you?
Hello. And if you're not sure what to do, just ask.
Hi, would you still like to see a menu?
No thanks, but can you please read it to me?
Sure, definitely.
Just treat us the way you would want to be treated, and we'll all be okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Alice.
Right.
Awkward no more. Nice job, Bob.
Okay, so again, there's no need to feel awkward when you meet someone with a disability because we are people first. And some tips to keep in mind in general is, well, first, let me emphasize what is disability etiquette. Disability etiquette is making everyone feel welcome. So some general tips and takeaways from the video to keep in mind are ask before you act. Talk directly to the person with a disability, not their aide, their companion, or their sign language interpreter. And don't grab a person by the arm. Offer your arm instead. Don't assume the person with a disability is the best judge of what they can and can't do. And finally, just relax. If you make a mistake, just apologize. Also, treat adults as adults. So next up to share some information about disability history is Angel Donardi, our Associate Director.
Thank you, Denise. All right, so this is just a brief history. As you can imagine, like all things, the history of things is very complex and there's a lot of nuances involved, but I just wanted to highlight kind of where we were in history and where we've come. And this is mostly reflected of American history. People with disabilities have been heavily marginalized, as you can imagine, throughout most of modern history. And disability was once seen as a moral failing. The person with the disability was faulted for having a disability, that they must have done something immoral to have a disability. And it was seen as a pitiable tragedy. And programs initially for people with disabilities were designed to remove them from the public, to keep them out of sight and to institutionalize them or worse. And I won't go into the worst because it's pretty awful. People with disabilities were often targets of mockery and were publicly shamed with their families. And some of the worst abuses, of course, came from mental health asylums. Some of you might be familiar with some of the awful stories that came out about how people were treated when they were institutionalized in these asylums. And people with disabilities were also the targets of genocide. The post-World War II era finally inspired some efforts to integrate rather than marginalize people with disabilities, because vets returning from war with injuries garnered the public sympathy and attention. So that did help shift public perception of people with disabilities as being worthy of being part of the community. Eventually, widespread and organized activism as part of the civil rights movement created real and lasting change. And the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 provided the very first government protections for people with disabilities in the United States. And finally, in 1990, that's a big gap in time, after many years of protests and activisms, the Americans with Disability Act was signed into law. And we've come a long way, and we have a long way to go. And along those same lines, everyday language that we use, we consider politically correct. People get a little bit bent out of shape. They're like, oh no, one more thing I have to keep in mind. I'll never get it right. And just understand that we all make mistakes. I make mistakes. I continue to even make mistakes. And we live in this universe every day. Words will slip out, and all you can do is apologize and learn from your mistakes. One of the things that we do at Life in many centers for independent living, we use people first language, which means that you put the person before the disability. In other words, instead of saying that's a blind person, you would say that's a person who is blind. That's an example. And so you would see the person beyond the label. And something that Denise likes to say that I absolutely love when it comes to labels is labels are for cans, not for people. So keep the labels on the cans and keep them away from people. Everyone's unique. Examples of terms to avoid is handicap. And that's one that is still used pretty frequently. Some of these are less used, but it's used from a medical perspective, and we come from a social perspective. So avoid the term handicap. Avoid invalid, afflicted, suffers from. Avoid saying what's wrong with you. Avoid using the word retarded, crippled, victim, and believe it or not, avoid using the word normal, because what's normal anyway, but a setting on the dryer, in my opinion. And then also calling someone brave, courageous, or inspiring just for having a disability and functioning on a day-to-day level is inappropriate. Now, if they're doing something that's brave, courageous, and inspiring to you above and beyond their disability, then absolutely. But just because they have a disability and are living independently, they're just like you. And also you want to avoid saying wheelchair bound. A person who uses a wheelchair isn't bound to that wheelchair. That wheelchair is freedom and independence. It's a tool, and they don't feel bound to it. They feel that they have finally got an opportunity to be mobile and have access, just like everyone else. And I'm going to continue to talk briefly about service animals. A lot of people are unsure about the etiquette around service animals, and it's understandable because we're used to having pets at home that we interact with like family members or like kids. A service animal has a job, and you have to remember that at all times. So when you see a handler and a service animal, always talk to the handler or the owner rather than the dog. In other words, you don't even want to make eye contact or interact with the animal in any way. And they're a team. You want to talk to the handler and always speak to them before getting permission to talk to or touch the animal, because the person's life can actually depend on that animal staying focused on their job. If you have a dog with you, keep your own dog a distance away from the working dog so as not to accidentally cause an interaction that could be unpleasant for everybody. Never offer food to a service dog. This is also distracting. You wouldn't want somebody to offer food to your dog, so I'm sure you understand that. Treat the owner and the handler with the sensitivity and respect. Don't ask personal questions about his or her disability. That's out of bounds, unless you know the person better. Don't assume that a napping service dog is off duty. That napping service dog is always on duty when they're out in public. And then do inform the handler if the service dog approaches you without their handler, because that service dog might be coming to you for help. So always seek out the handler if the service dog approaches you without them. And then don't assume that service dogs never get to just be dogs. Working dogs typically get plenty of R&R and playtime. And when they're home and out of their work clothes, they're free to behave like any other dog. And I'd like to introduce you to Sabrina Floyd, my colleague, who's going to be giving you the 411 on blind and low vision.
Thank you, Angel. Good afternoon, everyone. As Angel stated, I am visually impaired. And I think one of the first rules I would like to say is that when you are speaking, make sure you announce who you are so that we know who is speaking. And when you are answering a question or responding to a comment, you want to make sure that you use your words and not gestures. And also, if you are addressing someone, address them by their name or gently tap them on the arm to let them know that you are there. And as in the video show, if you would like to offer assistance in helping me walk or anything, don't grab my cane or grab my arm. Offer me your arm and offer me your arm to hold, and you can walk at your normal pace. Just be aware to let me know when there are steps or when I need to go up, step up or step down, and to avoid curves. And you don't have to be afraid to use the words look, see, or watch. These are everyday words that are used often, and these words aren't offensive. And one myth I like to clarify and let you know that's not true. Blind people do care about the way they appear, do care about their appearance. So don't think that we don't have fashion taste or like nice clothing. We do. We like to be stylish, and we also like to dress nice and decorate our homes nice. So just remember, never assume.
And I would like to follow up with that point and also re-emphasize, this is Denise, by the way, and I'm legally blind. And so I want to re-emphasize Sabrina's point. And our point throughout this whole presentation is don't assume, because anything is possible. Also, I have a quick question for you to think about. Can a person who is blind drive? Well, I'm here to tell you that we can drive. I had a former coworker that gave me driving lessons in our parking lot. I also participated in the Blind Driver Challenge at the Daytona Speedway. I want you to check out this next video, and this will show you the possibilities of what people who are blind can do.
In a garage, a red car sits on a jack. A man measures the air pressure in a tire.
Racing has been my whole life.
Dan Parker, the 2005
Two cars race down a track.
I'm a second-generation racer.
A blonde woman puts a car into gear.
Mom was a racer with a local drag strip, and she won. 8 months pregnant with me.
A pregnant blonde woman gets out of a car on a track.
I ran my first race at 8 years old on a mini bike. I came in second. I've always been able to handle pressure. You can't go to the starting line worried.
Dan Parker, always tough. Yeah, we're excited.
I knew I might come home beaten up or in a box.
A red and white car race.
I never imagined I'd come home blind.
White screen. Dan walks with a white cane.
March 31st, 2012. Right at the finish line, the car made a hard right turn, hit the poured concrete wall at 175 miles an hour. When they brought me out of the coma, the doctor said, "What do you see?" I said, "I see nothing." I don't remember ever seeing any blind people in public before I went blind.
Photos. Dan kisses a woman. Red race car.
One night, I woke up with the most vivid dream.
Dan in a cockpit.
That I could race again. That dream saved my life. In 2014, I enrolled at the Louisiana Center for the Blind. I graduated March 31st, 2015, 3 years to the date of the wreck. I wasn't gonna let blindness take my love of racing. The National Federation of the Blind teaches you there's so much of a fulfilling life. You just have to think outside the box. But I'd trade everything to be able to go driving. Autonomous cars would change my life. The government should invest in self-driving technology. That's the future of transportation. It's independence, it's freedom. Racing has been my whole life.
Blonde woman wears helmet in drag car.
More men climb Mount Everest that's in the 200 miles an hour club. To be the first blind man to go over 200 will be huge. This car is in rough shape. I brought her back. It's sort of like my story. We gave her one more shot. and I got one more shot left of me.
Red car races down the track.
I don't want to be treated as a sideshow. I want to be treated as a racer.
Dan Parker will be attempting to break a world record, becoming the fastest blind driver on land. Learn more at blinddriverchallenge.org.
So again, don't assume, because anything is possible. Next up, Rachel Black.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rachel Black, here to give you the 411 on invisible or non-apparent disabilities. The biggest thing is don't assume that if you can't easily see a disability that none exist. Never ask a person if they have a disability. There are hurtful stigmas around invisible disabilities, and it's a personal choice when and if they want to share that information. Understand that invisible disabilities are numerous, and some examples may include brain injury, autism spectrum disorder, MS or epilepsy. One myth is people who can walk but park in accessible parking spots are faking a disability. Another myth is people with non-apparent disabilities never use wheelchairs or other mobility aids. Next up is Angel Gennardi.
Thanks, Rachel. Helps if I unmute myself. So I wanted to go back to the myth that you just brought up about people who can walk but park in accessible parking spots or faking a disability. That's probably one of the biggest issues that comes up for a person with non-apparent disabilities, and people get really gripey about that. And I know it's easy to judge. So I think that's one of the themes that you're going to be seeing throughout all of this is never assume and don't judge, because you're not sure what's going on with that person. Do people fake? Absolutely. Or they're driving someone else's car. That does happen sometimes, but probably less often than you realized. And the next thing I'm going to be talking to you about is the 411 on mental health and behavioral health disabilities, which also carries its own stigma. And don't assume that people with psychiatric disabilities are more likely to be violent than people without. This is a myth. The wide range of behaviors associated with mental illness vary from passivity to disruptiveness, just like in the general population. When the illness is active, the individual may or may not be at risk of harming him or herself or others. You don't have to have a mental health diagnosis to be disruptive or violent, so don't confuse the two. People with mental illness do not necessarily have an intellectual disability. However, some people who have an intellectual disability can also have mental illness. And don't assume that people with psychiatric disabilities also have cognitive disabilities or less intelligent than the general population. In fact, many people with mental illness have above average intelligence. And do not assume that all people with psychiatric disabilities need extra assistance or should take medication. It's very individualized, and medication is not always the solution. And treat people with psychiatric disabilities as individuals, and try not to make assumptions based on your previous experiences with other people who had psychiatric disabilities. And don't assume that people with psychiatric disabilities are not capable of working in a wide variety of jobs that require a wide range of skills and abilities. And don't assume that they don't know what's best for them or they have poor judgment. That's frequently not the case. Sometimes in crisis, their judgment is altered, but that's inconsistent. It can change, just like for anybody else. And if you are dealing with someone in crisis who has a psychiatric disability, if they get upset, ask calmly if there's anything you can do to help, and always respect their wishes. And don't assume that they can't cope with stress. Like most people, they've developed coping skills that may be less traditional. And if you know them well, you'll get used to how they cope with stress. If the person seems agitated, again, just speak calmly and offer to repeat the information. And if they're nervous or confused, be willing to break things down step by step. And respect the person's choice of language or terminology. Or like I said earlier, language does matter for people, but it's also very individualized. So they might not want to be considered mentally ill, they might have a different terminology for it. And if they share that with you, just try to respect that. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Shannon Ginn, who's going to give us the 411 on learning disabilities. Take it away, Shannon. I don't know, Shannon, can you hear? Nope, you're muted. There, nope, you're still muted. We'll give Shannon a second. There you go. Now you're unmuted. You should be good.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
Okay, I'm Shannon again, giving a 411 on learning disabilities. A person with a learning disability or with dyslexia or other learning disabilities has a hard time interpreting information. A person with a learning disability want to verbally explain or give them extra time to read the information. Also, when giving the person given certain simple instructions, they may ask you to write it down to make it easier for them to understand it. Also, don't be surprised with a person with a learning disability that certain information may seem scrambled when they're reading or understanding the information. Also, when trying to give a person that has a learning disability information, to ask them what is the best direct way to give them the information and to be very direct in that. Also, a person with a learning disability, such as Parkinson's order, partial disorder, may be just uncomfortable in certain settings. They may feel better in a more quiet setting and to where there's not much distractions or noise, such as a radio playing or people walking around making noise or very loud curtains. And one myth fact is that people think that with people that have a learning disability that are not very intelligent, but they are in fact average to very intelligent. And one good example of that would be myself. I grew up with a learning disability to where I always had stuff structured when I was a kid. When people would say very complex words or phrases, it would have to be broken down, explained better to me. But when I grew up, they had thought that I would have to do 8 years of high school and never be able to go to college. But in fact, I graduated with only doing 4 years of high school, graduated with honors, did a couple of years of college. But of course, college is not for everybody. But I was able to persevere and even now work here at Life and do really great work. Now I'll be turning it over to my colleague, Clay Mintz.
Hello, everyone. My name is Clay Mims, and I'm going to present the 411 on intellectual and developmental disabilities. All right, so if the person is having trouble understanding you, repeat yourself under different words without getting frustrated. If speaking to an adult, keep all conversations at an adult level, use a calm voice, and be reassuring. Individuals can usually tell if they are being talked down to, which can make a situation worse. Use plain language, short sentences, and simple concrete words. Keep your manners encouraging rather than correcting. Give your manners, encouraging rather than correcting. May be sensitive to the tone of your voice. Don't rush. Trust is built slowly. Treat adults as adults. Encourage self-advocacy and opportunity for autonomy. Give extra time for the person to process what you are saying to respond. Look for signs of stress and confusion, and treat each person as an individual with talents and abilities deserving of respect and dignity. And I'm going to introduce Miss Allison Huffin, our adrenaline junkie herself, and she's going to go over 411 on mobility disabilities.
Hello, everyone. My name is Allison Huffin. For one, 411 on mobility disabilities. For one, treat
Hey,
us as
Allison?
you would. Yes.
I'm sorry. Can you talk a little bit louder?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. You might want to get closer to your mic. You're just a little muted. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. Because I'm going to give you my name is Allison Huffin. I'm going to give you the 411 on the mobility disabilities. For one, treat us as you would treat anyone else. Never attempt to help without permission. Please don't point, laugh, or stare. Children are naturally curious, and that's great, but they should be taught disability etiquette at an early age. Don't be afraid to ask questions, but speak directly to us, not about us. If the conversation lasts more than a few minutes, sit down or kneel to get yourself on the same level as the person in the wheelchair. A person's wheelchair or other mobility aid is part of their personal space and should be treated with respect. Don't grab, hang, or lean on it unless you have their express permission. And when giving wheelchair users directions, be aware of architectural barriers such as narrow doorways, stairs, curbs, etc. Wheelchair accessible ramps benefit everyone, but don't block access to them with your car or belongings. When parking next to an accessible parking spot, be sure not to block the sidewalk or access to their car doors. Myth: wheelchair users can't walk. That's a fact. Some wheelchair users can't walk. Some use other mobility aids such as braces, walkers, or crutches. They use wheelchairs some of the time to conserve energy, reduce pain, and move about more quickly. And wheelchairs, canes, braces, walkers, and other mobility devices are a means of freedom, which allows the person to move about independently. Don't assume that using a mobility aid is a tragedy. It's not. It's a tool. And even with adaptive sports and recreation options, people with disabilities can enjoy sports and adventures just like everyone else. And from my personal experience, I enjoy quite a bit of different types of adaptive sports. I definitely love rock climbing, which I have a picture of me actually climbing up at the Abilities Expo. I climbed all the way up to the top, actually. That's just me on the way down. I've done numerous different types of sports. Cycling, there's always different ways. And also my co-worker Clay Mims also has a personal experience of playing adaptive sports as well. Clay.
Yes. Again, my name is Clay Mims, and I was born with cerebral palsy that affected the left side of my body. And as any child wanted to, they wanted to get out and play sports such as baseball and golf. And I was able to do both. I overcame the challenges I had. As far as baseball goes, when I first started playing baseball, they had a right-hander's glove, which goes on your left hand. And they would stick me in right field to play baseball. And I would do everything I could to get the ball, but I could never control how to catch the ball and throw it into the infield. So my stepfather actually, after a couple of years, my stepfather suggested, well, why don't you use a glove on your right hand, which is a left-hander's glove. So I tried that, and I was able to have the maneuverability and motion that I needed to catch the ball. I would then put my glove under my left arm, grab the ball with my right, and throw it. And I became very good at it. I actually moved from right field to third base, and I was a pitcher for a little while. So I really excelled at that. And that is my story. Overcame challenges, and through perseverance and my never give up, never lose attitude, I'm able to play baseball. And I'm actually assistant coach on the baseball team right now. So
That's awesome.
So for next up, we have Andrea Daigle for our deaf or hard of hearing and speech disabilities.
Thank you, Clay. Again, I'm Andrea Daigle, and I have the 411 on deaf or hard of hearing and speech disabilities. You always want to talk directly to the person, even if they are using an interpreter. When you're speaking to a person who is deaf or hard of hearing, you want to make sure that they can see your lips, because many rely on lip reading. Speak in a clear, normal tone of voice. Look directly at the person and speak expressively. A person with a significant hearing loss will rely on facial expressions, gestures, and movements to better understand what you're trying to communicate to them. If you are using sign language to communicate with a person that is deaf or hard of hearing, make sure that you are signing correctly as to not offend them. If you need to get a deaf or hard of hearing person's attention, try waving your hand or gently tapping them on the shoulder. Never shout at that person that is deaf or hard of hearing. And remember to always use empathy. Treat a person as you'd want to be treated. A few myths on deaf or hard of hearing persons. All people with hearing loss are totally and completely deaf. All people with hearing loss understand and participate in deaf culture. And lastly, all people with hearing loss can read lips.
And those are common misconceptions, aren't they?
Yes, they are. And then for the 411 on speech disabilities, please do not be tempted to finish the sentence of a person with a speech disability, no matter how long it takes the person to finish. Patience is key. Allow the person all the time they need to say everything they wish to say. Always look directly at the person you are communicating with. Never mimic or mock a person for their speech. Never pretend to know what a person is saying. Instead, ask the person to repeat or rephrase, or even offer them a pen and paper. And always remember the importance of listening to understand, not just to reply. And I believe I'm passing this back to Angel.
Rachel.
Or is it Denise? Okay, Angel.
You would have hit on one of us eventually. Thanks. Take it away, Rachel.
So disability does not define a life. We have some public figures of note with disabilities. We have Stevie Wonder, who's blind, Selena Gomez, who has a non-apparent chronic disability, lupus, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was one of our presidents, had post-polio. And then you have Millie Bobby Brown, who plays in the Netflix show Stranger Things, is actually deaf in one ear.
I know that we've presented a lot of information here, but one thing to keep in mind, let simple respect and common courtesy govern all of your interactions. So again, I'll repeat, let simple respect and common courtesy govern all of your interactions. Also remember, don't assume, because anything is possible. So next, we're going to open the floor for questions and answers. And also, maybe you have a disability etiquette tip of your own that you want to share. So feel free to unmute yourself, or if you'd like, you can put your question in the chat. And we'll give you a minute to unmute if you'd like to ask a question or share.
And feel free to share anything that you learned new today or that surprised you, or that you thought you knew that you learned differently about.
Hello, I got a question. I mean, I don't have a question. I'm Brenda Walker, and the information, oh my gosh, that you all provided today was, I mean, very, very, very helpful to me of not knowing. I mean, although of my my disability that I have, how to approach people in different ways in which, you know, is taught, but looking, I mean, so I can pass it on to my grandchildren of how to treat people, you know, how treating people with disabilities. You know, children do have a tendency of asking, you know, what's wrong with that person? Now I can explain in a better way. This is how this is, and this is what you're supposed to do. And the information that you all provided today was very, very, it's more than 100%. And I appreciate the, as they say, the 411 on disability.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
Thank you, Brenda. And also, you know, this is our personal take on things. We are all experts in our own disability, and we've all had to learn about each other's disabilities. And like I said, we exist in this every day, and there's always changes. There's always new information. And, you know, so like Denise said, keep it simple, be courteous, and you're halfway there. In other words, treat people the way you want to be treated. And we have a question from Amy Ambrose, who's raised her hand. You're muted. There you go.
My question is about the physical disabilities. I was really glad that it was presented about being courteous and not parking in spaces and things of that nature. My son is 30 years old and I deal with him. He's severely, profoundly disabled. My question is, long years ago, there was an organization, I was not familiar with Life at the time, but they presented little courtesy tickets that we could, print out and we could have, and that we could share. You don't want to really offend anybody, but when you're the one that's trying to struggle and get in and out of the cars and stuff like that, I've had to park in the middle of the street. And so, if we have something, so I think you're waving it there, and I just wanted to know about that. So I'd like to know how I can get some of those.
Here, what I'll do is I'll just send you really all it is. What Amy's referring to is something called a parking regulation reminder. And if you're brave enough, you can put this on someone's windshield. If they don't have a placard or a permanent license plate that says that they have a disability, are entitled to park there, or if they're blocking a wheelchair accessible van, if the person can't get in and out, if you park in those blue stripes next to a wheelchair accessible parking spot, you are actually preventing the use of that wheelchair accessible parking spot. So thinking that it's okay to park on the stripes, it's definitely not. Those stripes give space for a ramp to come out of it, an adapted vehicle, so that the person has room to turn to get in and out of their vehicle. So the other thing is backing up over sidewalks. If your car overlaps the sidewalk, if a person with a disability is attempting to navigate down that sidewalk, they can't get by. And so, that's pretty bad news. But what she's talking about, it says, attention, you are parked, and then it says, in a space reserved for a person with a disability or too close to an access ramp used by people in wheelchairs, or in a space designed to give a person enough room to load or unload a wheelchair. And it just says, this is not a ticket, it is a reminder. And then it goes on to kind of explain things very politely. So if you're brave enough to use something like that, I'm happy to send this to you. And you can do a parking regulation reminder, and try not to be confrontational. Sometimes people with disabilities are using those spots without a placard. So this is probably the last confrontational way to do it. And if they're legitimate, they'll just disregard it. Someone might get angry about it, but it's a fact. Basically, they're preventing another person from having free access the way they do. And Elaine Spencer has her hand raised. Hey, Elaine.
Hey, Angel, this is a fantastic presentation, and thank you all so much for sharing the 411 on disabilities, and I've learned a lot. I will say that and Angel, I would like to have some of your things for the car windows or to put on cars, because all of my friends or anyone that knows me knows that is my biggest pet peeve, is to see someone park in a handicapped space and jump out and walk better than I do into the store. It just galls me. I can't stand it. And then another thing, I want to just share that I know a little girl here in Sylvania, Georgia. And by the way, I'm Elaine with the Effingham Family Connection, for those that don't know me. And my disability is I talk too much, probably. So
that's not a disability.
But there's a little girl in my town that unfortunately she had cancer in her leg, and they've had to amputate most of her leg. She is in school. I think she's still in elementary school, but it's amazing to watch her and around her peers. It's like the children that she goes to school with, they don't even see her disability. She is just one of them, and they don't see anything out of the ordinary. And she has a prosthesis, and they have to change that because she's still growing, so they change it quite frequently. Mm-hmm. But the her friends and all the student population, I don't believe even see that as a disability.
Yeah,
They
and
just
so
see it as being her.
what you're witnessing is the normalization of people with disabilities in the everyday community. Everybody wants to be seen as unique, and I'm sure as she gets older, she'll be more comfortable about having a disability and won't mind being seen to have a disability. But for children to normalize it, it actually bodes well for them as they grow up, because in the workplace, in church, their neighbors, everything else, to them, it will just be another person. It won't be the disability first, it will be the person first. So that's
Absolutely.
fantastic.
And I think that's why they see this child. She is a person first. She swims, she takes dance lessons, and she's not letting that stand in her way at all. So,
well, that's fantastic. I love to hear kids getting into stuff like that. I was always afraid they were just stuck in front of their TVs anymore. Thanks, Elaine. And we have Jan Cornelius with her hand raised. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Jan.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to say that I was born blind in my left eye, totally blind. And I never been qualified for anything. But you know, if you're born with something wrong with your hand, one hand, or if it has to be amputated, or one leg, and it has to be amputated, you're treated a different way. And also, I just wanted to say that I hate when a person, I'm in a wheelchair, and I hate when a person is dealing with another person and I'm right there and they're talking about me. I hate that. So that's very disrespectful, because there's nothing wrong with my mind, there's something wrong with my legs. And another thing, one last thing I want to say is that a person who is in a wheelchair is actually a burden on someone else. So the lifting of putting the wheelchair in and out and carrying things, is there a way that a person could get a lighter wheelchair? Because these chairs are very expensive. So it'll help the person that's caring for them.
Sure. Yeah. And Denise can talk to you, Jan, about that away from today's event. But also I want to address that too, that it usually starts with a doctor's order for a custom wheelchair. If you're a full-time wheelchair user, custom wheelchairs and lighter wheelchairs are your best friend. And there are wheelchairs that are designed to be more mobile and more lightweight, because you're right, caregivers do often end up injuring themselves by having to lift those heavier wheelchairs in and out. And anybody that has never lifted one, they're heavy and they're awkward. So that's a very good question. And I'm going to take a note for Denise to follow up with you, Jan, about the specific options for that, so we can get that information to you.
And also, I appreciate the point that you brought out as well, Jan, about people talking over you like you're not there, you know, talking to your companion as opposed to you directly. So I think yeah, I can certainly relate to that.
Yes, this is Wendy.
Hey, Wendy.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Hi. That happened to me, and I want to know, I went into this business in Savannah, and it's a restaurant, and I placed my order, and instead of the man standing in front of the restaurant, he looked over at my husband. He was like, what's wrong with her? Can't she see? You know, he said a lot of statements that was derogative of me. And he talked over me. And I was placing my order just as naturally and, you know, clearly as I could. And he still looked over at my husband and said, what's wrong with her? Can't she see? Can she not see? And this, that, and other. And he made me feel a type of way. And after we went that day, he likes to go to this restaurant and I didn't want to go back. And I told him, I said, you know, I don't like the way he made me feel like that day. And so I didn't go back. Should I go back in, and should I say something to him?
I have a suggestion, Wendy. Sometimes, and unfortunately, people with disabilities are often called upon to take the high road. The burden is placed on us to correct these social situations and always be the most tolerant and educational and everything. But there's also something to that. What you've encountered is what I call a teachable moment. And so in a situation like that, I think you could say, hi, my name is Wendy, and I can hear just fine. And I'm perfectly happy to place my own order. You don't have to divulge your disability, and you don't have to share a single thing about your private history. But you can remind them that you're a person first, and it does two things. It doesn't alienate them, It teaches them to be more respectful the next time they encounter a person with a disability. And it potentially makes you way
Yes.
more comfortable to go back and enjoy that restaurant with your husband. So just introduce yourself. Hey, I'm Wendy. And yes,
Can
you
you
can
please
say,
stop talking to my husband like I can't answer you
yeah,
myself?
I can answer, or you can just say, I can answer for myself. And this person, you also got to be careful to not assume that that person might have an intellectual disability, because sometimes people with intellectual disabilities will blurt things that would be otherwise inappropriate from a societal
Yeah.
perspective.
Well,
So, but if they're
yeah.
just a rude person, it's not really your job to make the whole world better. But I do want it to be better for you. And so I hope you will see
Yes.
this as a potential teaching moment. And I think Denise was going to add something to that.
Yeah, I just want, I think that we all can weigh in on that. And I'd like to hear from, some others. How have you handled that? I know for me, whenever I'm out with my companion, significant other, I just ask him, teach him to pretend like he's just dumb and not hearing it, so that I speak up and answer on behalf of myself. And he just, walks away or refers them back to me. But I'd like to hear.
But I don't think that he meant any harm, because he also said, "Oh, you have a disability." He said, "The food is on me," and he gave it to me free. I appreciated that, but I did want to relate that in the future, please don't disregard what I'm saying and talk to my husband or someone just because I have a disability. I can also speak for myself, and I was, until he made me feel uncomfortable. But he did give me that meal free.
Well, that shows that he acknowledged that maybe what he was doing was inappropriate. And another tactic is just say, hey, what's your name? If he says, hey, my name's Bob or Joseph or whatever, you'll say, hey, Joseph, I'm Wendy. And please advocate for yourself. I encourage self-advocacy at every turn, because those are, like I said,
Yeah,
those are
because we
teachable
still go
moments.
to that store, but I just don't go up to the front. I just sit in the restaurant, and my husband would go and order or whatever. And then I haven't seen him, that particular guy, there in a minute for a while. But
I see.
I stopped going up there because it was embarrassing for me when he would do that. So
Yeah,
he did that like twice.
Uncomfortable. Yeah, no, nobody wants to be put in that situation. And like I said, society really expects us to be to take the high road always, and to
The high road,
be the
yeah.
one that's accommodating. And sometimes you just have to say,
Yeah.
hey, that's impolite, just like
Yeah.
anybody else. But does anybody else have any tips for Wendy that they want to share with her if they've been in similar situations?
Well, my name is Beverly Mitchell, and I really have enjoyed this segment for disabled people. It enlightened me on a lot of things, the way we approach people, situations, and circumstances. So I have a handicap tag. So when I have the proper energy, I don't park in that spot. I'll let somebody else park there that might really, really need it more. And so a lot of times we do have to be considerate, very considerate. So when we considerate of others, it is the law of attraction, it might allow somebody else to be considerate of you. So I'm I'm grateful. When I was coming off of a walker and a cane, sometimes I use it, but I try to do the right thing so I can have the right energy to not use it as much. But I'm just so grateful that healing is continuing to take place in my life from so many situations. And I'm just grateful now.
That's remarkable. Thank you for sharing that, Beverly. And I
Okay.
like what you said too. Let me just say, I appreciate that you understand that there's some days where you might need that parking spot more than others. And you know that you're entitled to use it, but you also know that if you have a better day, if you're having more energy or less pain, that you'll give up that spot and you'll park in a different spot and allow somebody else to use it. And I do hope that that comes back around to you. Like you said, the law of attraction, that your courtesy for other people comes back to you. And I'm so glad to hear that you're continuing to heal every day. That's powerful.
Yes, I'm a stage 4 lung cancer from secondhand smoke.
Goodness.
With a heart condition, but my heart is stronger now. And I just give praises to God, and I give the glory to him, nothing that I've done. I just give him the glory for everything. And so we have to do that no matter what condition we have, mentally, physically, or whatever, because sometimes intellectual, I have to write a lot of things down because I can't maybe remember them as good, but I'm getting better with that too. So
Well, that's
just have to-
fantastic. And I think that segment of that presentation probably spoke to you about if you are talking to someone who's either a stroke survivor, has intellectual disability or something like that, and they're asking you to slow down or to write something down instead of speaking it. Because we're in such a hurry in this world. We like to do something. And one of my pet peeves for people with aphasia, which is associated often with stroke, where they can't respond very quickly with speech, is someone says, "Hey, how are you doing today?" And they do not give them time to even respond. They're halfway through opening their mouth and the person's already gone. So just slow down, folks, because you don't know if it takes someone time to process what you've even asked them and or initiate that response. So I think Beverly, I'm so pleased to hear that you are getting better, because I know that can be frustrating as well. But boy, you've covered a lot of what we've gone today with your personal experience, and I really appreciate that.
Well, let me tell you one more thing that I appreciate. I'm 60 years old. I don't have any children, but I had a dog that lived 23 years. Young, and then I had an English bull mastiff that lived 15. So with the blind impaired, the ones that have the dog, so I learned something today. Do not look at the dog, do not make contact with the dog, talk to the owner and the handler. And I should have known not to do that. Now it makes more sense. So from this day forward, I would never do that.
Yay!
I will only
Mission accomplished. Yes.
Yeah, never ever do that, because I'm such a dog lover, and sometimes it comes automatic.
Yep.
So I will never do that again.
Thank you. Very good point. And so many people do the same thing. They just don't understand that dog is working. Oh, Elaine's got her hand raised again. Go ahead, Elaine.
Okay, just a quick question, and I'm glad that she mentioned that about the therapy dog. What is the difference? How do you tell if you're out in public, if it's a therapy dog or if it's a working dog for someone with a person with a disability? Because I've always heard that you can pet a therapy dog. That some people or have I got that just totally opposite?
It's not totally opposite. Now, there's a difference between a therapy dog and a service dog and a companion animal. Now, a therapy dog, a person is usually inviting you to interact with that animal because that's part of their job, is that interaction. They're there for comfort and for enjoyment and different types of therapy. A true service animal is always it's indicated. Now, they don't have to be certified. They do have to be up to date on their vaccines and everything, just like any other animal in that county. That is done county by county. And they don't have to present you papers or anything, but most serious handlers will always make sure their dog is very clearly identified as a service animal. And when in doubt, because you're always going to be interacting with the handler or owner first, you can ask. If the opportunity. Now, if they're out just doing their business, just avoid that question. But therapy dogs are different than service animals. Now, sometimes it can be both. A person can have a service animal that they also use to take to places for therapy. It's less common because that dog usually has very tunnel vision. Service animals have tunnel vision. They are tuned into their handler at all times. Like I said, even a sleeping service dog is on the clock. So usually they are clearly identified because that handler has also been trained on how to make sure that they're identified as such in public.
Thank you.
And sorry, Denise, I didn't mean to step over you. I know you were starting to say something as well.
No, that's okay. But I just wanted to see, does anyone else have any questions or comments or tips that you'd like to share?
Hey, there's Jan again. Go ahead, Jan.
And it's one other thing that bothers me, and it's probably nothing nobody can do about it. But when you go, like when I used to go to the grocery store, and you know how you get the little cart, and a person, like if you're coming back to put your grocery in the car, and somebody stands there and stand behind you and want that cart, I need to take my time to get in and out of the car. I would like for people to know that, wait, you can get the cart, but don't stand there like you the police for me to get in or out of my car. It irritates me.
Yeah, that goes back to people just being impatient. I once did an empathy exercise in college and had people put themselves in the place. This was specific to the aging population. So what I did was I put kind of gloves over their hands. I put Vaseline on, eyeglasses, and had them try to do certain tasks like write a check, sign, button their shirt, pick up cotton balls, all kinds of stuff. And they were frustrated because it was taking them longer. And I'm like, now imagine yourself standing in the checkout line and somebody behind you is rushing you or stomping their foot or huffing and everything else. I said, just be patient with people because, you know, somebody's not going to, and nobody is required to walk around with a sign around their neck that says, hey, I have a disability and I move a little bit slower. Now, if you're a wheelchair user such as yourself, they have clues. I mean, you know, come on, people, get with it. Don't be rude and don't rush people. You know, the world's moving fast enough as it is. Slow down a little bit and be courteous. And thank you for sharing that because it's a reminder for all of us. We all get impatient. We're all in a hurry. We're only focused on ourselves and what we have to do. And it's so important just to slow down and be part of what's happening around you and tune in. Because if you stop and pay attention, you'll notice if someone's moving a little slower, or if you're in a situation where a door is not accessible and you see someone who's using a mobility aid, don't assume that they need help with it. But that is a good situation where you can say, hey, can I get the door for you? I would do the same thing for someone carrying shopping bags or a baby or something like that. It's really no different.
Yes, and I'm Beverly Mitchell again, and we really have to be courteous because I'm driving here in Savannah, and you know, everybody in a hurry. And a lot of times when you just like being cordial and, you know, keeping up with the flow of traffic and somebody gets behind you and they blow, you be done thought you did something wrong. Because, you know, so
it's so true.
I'm learning to be a little more mindful about that. So I'm driving from the back the majority of the time so nobody don't get behind me and start honking their horn.
There you go.
But I used to like panic, but now I don't.
Yeah. Yeah, I just pretty much say, well, let them do what they're doing and just focus on what you're doing. I guess I'm at that age in life where you just go, I just don't care anymore. I'm done.
But when you when you driving and you just hear a horn just out of the blue, sometimes it could throw you into a panic mode.
Yeah, it startles you, and so you get that flight or fight response going on, and your heartbeat revs up, and yeah, that's not pleasant. And you know, it's the same thing if you're in a parking lot. Y'all that use those little buttons on your key fob that makes your horn blow when you lock the doors. Okay, try not to do it when somebody's standing directly in front of your vehicle. That's all I'm saying. Because I will jump a mile every time.
That's right.
Okay, all right. What I've got on the screen, Denise, is our locations and hours too.
I just wanted to make sure, I heard someone else trying to chime in, so I just wanted to make sure no one else was trying to say something.
Oh, I don't see anybody. If there's anybody else that wants to say anything, we'll give you a second to unmute yourself and feel free to speak up.
Okay, if not, then I just want to give Sabrina an opportunity to talk about our upcoming events.
All right, guys. Next week, Wednesday, we're going to start our first official social club meeting, and it's at 1 o'clock. And I'll be sending out the link to that, which is actually, if you are a member of our peer support, it's the actual same link. So unlike peer support, this is something more of an interactive activities that we're going to be playing games. And for our first meeting, we actually are doing a door prize. So do come and log in on next week, Wednesday at 1 o'clock. And I hope to see you guys there.
Yeah, everybody's going to show up for those door prizes. Those are fun.
I know, right? Did you hear me say that? Good door prize.
Wow.
So it's going to be fun. In fact, our first meeting, we are going to be playing Scattergory. And Allison's going to host the game. Scattergory, yes. And Allison would be assisting in doing that.
We got double trouble. We got Allison and Sabrina, so you know it'll be fun.
Yes.
And also stay tuned for our Independent Life Online workshops. They usually come up on either the 3rd or the 4th Thursday of every month. Next month is pretty eventful, very packed with different events. We have one coming up on Social Security. We have voting. We have financial planning and learning all about ABLE accounts. In May, we just have a series of workshops and events coming up. So stay tuned to our social media Facebook page. Also, if you're not receiving our newsletter, give us a call and let us know, and we will add you to our list. So I'd like to also just let you know that we're located on Waters in the CVS Shopping Center. We are only accepting visits by appointment only, so feel free to give us a call if you need anything, and we can schedule an appointment with you. So just our service information, our phone number and contact information is on the screen, and feel free to give us a call if you need anything. We have another Disability 411 presentation coming up in July, but if you would like one for your group or organization before then, give us a call and we'll set it up.
Okay, that's great. There's a couple of things in the chat thanking us for the presentation and requesting that we send flyers and everything, and we'll be happy to do that. We get busy like everyone else. If for some reason I do not get back to you in a timely manner, don't hesitate to reach out. That never bothers me. I've got lots of things going on just like you do, so don't feel bad about having to remind me, but I did make myself a note for a couple of you that wanted the information. Today's video is being recorded, but it's not necessarily going to be public for any length of time. We probably will post it on our Facebook page at some point, but like Denise said, we'll be doing this again in July. And we'll also are offering it for different agencies, organizations, classes, schools, neighborhood groups, whatever. Just let us know and we'll be happy to help in any way we can.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today, and thank you for all of your questions and input and experiences and tips. And like I said, join us Wednesday for our social activity, social club, and you'll be getting a flyer about that very soon.
Yes. Sounds fun. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you for joining us and participating.
Thank you.
Everyone have a good day.
Thank you, everyone. Have a
Great day.